This is Real Oregon Lifestyle with Andrea Fay and Jen Fiddler, two licensed real estate brokers who share their love of all things Oregon.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Andrea Fay.
I'm Jen Fiddler.
And welcome to Real Oregon Lifestyle. Today, we've got a buyer special for you. Anyone that's out there that is thinking about purchasing a home, maybe you're a first-time home buyer, but you're still trying to get some information on what the market is like. We've got a whole special just for you. First, we're going to go into our quick market update, and that'll give you a good idea of where things are right now. Jen, what's going on in the Portland market?
I've got my numbers here. It still remains a pretty strong seller's market. We actually decreased, when I looked at the July numbers, we had a decrease in inventory from 2.3 months to 1.2 months. So comparing June to July, that's in a balanced market, again, that whether it's neither a buyer's or a seller's market, inventory is around 5 to 6 months. So obviously when it gets really low like that, that's an extreme seller's market. Days on market are down. So the average days on market was 42 compared to 44 in July of 2019. We've had a 3.7% overall increase in appreciation. Here's one that I found super interesting. So I pulled the stats from May, and the average sales price for the Portland metro area was $457,000. In July, the average sales price was $475,000. So that was a pretty staggering one to actually see the numbers on. So it continues to remain a strong seller's market. That doesn't mean there's not hope for buyers and strategies that they can employ, and it doesn't mean it's not a good time to buy. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But what are you seeing down in Corvallis?
It's a very similar thing. I pulled up the statistics on Monday, and it's very similar. We've got lower inventory, fewer homes coming to the market, and then more homes are getting being put under contract or pending. And so it's a really similar thing. We've got very low inventory, and it's a little bit tougher for buyers out there. Great for sellers because they are getting above asking price offers typically, so long as the house is in great condition and that it presents well to the market. So yeah, real similar thing. We tend to parallel Portland pretty closely. Our numbers may not be exact, but the market's doing about the same thing here.
And can I ask you guys, maybe I missed it, but do you know what the median time is that homes are staying on the market?
So as far as the days on market goes, Jen's got, what was it, 42 is what you said up in Portland?
42. So that's from the time it gets listed to the time it actually closes. And so that's relatively quick considering that most loans can close in 30 days right now. Mm-hmm. So that tells you, that you're not looking at maybe more than 12 days on market across the board too. And I'm seeing the new inventory, and especially if it's priced correctly, close a lot quicker than that. So that's the average of everything that was listed.
Yeah, that's very true. And in most homes, if they're presented well to the market, you're going to see them, a few days on the market go under contract. And usually what's happening is multiple buyers are submitting offers. The seller is picking one offer out of those few that have been submitted. And typically because buyers are competing against each other, they know right off the bat that they're going to need to make an above price offer. So similar in the Valley too, as far as the days on market, we're seeing maybe not quite as long or maybe not quite as short of a time frame, but pretty close as far as the numbers go. So, but also speaking of numbers, rates are incredibly low right now. And I think I saw a lender post on Facebook that he had one for 2.75. That's about as low as I've seen it ever.
I had somebody locked at 2.62 on a 30-year fixed.
Yeah, that's crazy low.
That is crazy. And so I understand where buyers are, running up into some kind of frustrating situations considering how low the inventory is and how competitive it is for them. But the flip side to that is their buying power is it's never been this good before. Historically, rates have never been this good for this long. And so we were talking and we were like, how can we get the word out about this? And there's an adage that for every 1% your interest rate goes up, you lose 10% of your purchasing power. So we brought a good infographic for that.
Yeah, Andy, you want to pull that up? And by the way, this comes from our good friends at Ticor Title. They are fantastic to work with as far as title companies go. We tend to work with all of the title companies, but it was great timing that they put out this information today. Thank you, Laura Pyatt.
Woohoo. Shout out to Laura. She's wonderful. So as you can see, when rates are at 4.25 on a $400,000 house, your payment's $1,968 per month. When you get down into that 2.75, that's $1,633 a month. That is a huge amount of difference in the buyer's purchasing power. That just shows the power that buyers have right now with how great rates are.
Absolutely.
And the difference between a $400,000 house and a $360,000 up here in Portland is pretty staggering. I don't know what it's like down there if it makes that big of a difference, but up here it can mean the difference between a financeable house and a non-financeable house in some cases.
Here it's not, I think because your price range is going to be a little bit higher up in the Portland area. But it still can make a huge difference on buying power. That could mean that the new construction house that you wanted to purchase, perhaps now you can buy a little bit bigger house. And maybe get a few bells and whistles that you wanted on the house that you didn't think that you could afford. So it does make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And one thing I always tell buyers to keep in mind too, a lot of times when we're looking at, having to write $10 or $15 or $20,000 over asking price to even be in the ballpark for getting the offer accepted, that's really not that much money per month when you're looking at it that way. I know $10,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you're financing that over 30 years and rates are as low as they are, that works out to be about $40 a month. I mean, I don't know about you, but I waste $40 a month all the time on other coffee and going out to eat and all kinds of crazy things. If that's what it took to get a house that I really wanted and that was the difference, I'd absolutely have no problem writing $10,000 over asking price.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a pedicure,
Yeah.
that's a pedicure plus tip. So, and the thing is, with the rates this way, you're probably not looking at needing to give up that pedicure at the same time. So that's the beauty of it.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, so we also, given the fact that the buyers really do have a lot of power right now, and yes, there is lower inventory, but there are things that can be done. And Jen and I have some winning strategies. They're going to be a little bit different in the Portland area, just based on the market being a little bit different up there, and based on how things are down here. However, generally, there's going to be some tips that you need to do. First one on our big list is get your pre-approval done ahead of time. There's really no sense in going out and looking at homes because if you're not prepared to write an offer the second you set foot in that house, you may not even be in the running. If you have to go to a lender and get pre-approved and maybe wait 24 to 48 hours for that pre-approval to come in, at this point, there's already probably 5 offers on the table. And you may actually just miss out on that property and you're going to be heartbroken. And that's the one thing that we can't stand, is we don't want to see people heartbroken.
Oh, I 100% agree. And as a listing agent, even if the seller or the buyers wanted to submit an offer, as a listing agent, I wouldn't even let my sellers consider an offer that didn't have a pre-approval letter. Lender regulations have tightened up with all of the COVID stuff going on. buyers are having to provide more documentation. And I'm seeing a change to a lot of the offers that I've received this year on my listings where they're already fully through underwriting. It's just a matter of the appraisal and the property, being up to par for the lender. It's not a matter of the buyer providing any more documentation or anything else. So it's going that extra step to make sure that the deal is going to go through.
Absolutely. And the more ahead of the game and the more organized you look as a buyer and the better quality buyer that you look like, because, in a sense, you're going to be an offer and you're going to be a few pages of paper on that someone's going to be reviewing all at the same time. And the seller's going to be looking at numbers, but they're also going to be looking at your pre-qualification. And they want to know how qualified are you? And the pre-qual is definitely, the pre-approval letter is going to be that ticket to make sure they feel comfortable with it.
Absolutely.
So other things that we do is, when Jen and I start working with buyers, we end up sending listings to you. And there's various different ways that we can do that. But what we need to do is make sure that when you're getting those listings, you're actually watching your email, your text messages, the way that we send it to you. Make sure you're watching those very closely. I would say check morning and check afternoon. And if there's a home in there that comes up that you're like, oh yeah, I absolutely love this house, we need to go see it. You really need to go see it and be in the home within 24 hours.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that things have really changed too. Buyers have so much power with Redfin and Zillow and all the other consumer apps that a lot of times they're sending me the properties that they want to see before I've even had a chance to send them to them. I can set you up on an automatic email notification, but if I'm out in the field and I miss a listing that might kind of fit the criteria, but we didn't necessarily have that, being sent to you, let me know. I personally, when I was looking for a house 2 years ago when we bought, I had myself set up on an automatic email notification, but I was looking on Redfin and I found that our current house was having an open house. It wasn't one I had considered because I didn't like the pictures, but I was bored. I went to the open house with the dog in the back seat and ran in real quick. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do something with this house. And I can see past the red paint. I can see past some of the brass fixtures and some of the stuff that people weren't able to see past. So I just encourage people to use a multitude of different ways to look for homes. It's addicting anyway. I mean, I think people just automatically do that because it's fun. You get up in the morning and scan Redfin while you're drinking your coffee and they'll send you notifications. It's really
fun.
Yeah, and it's really switched. We don't really have all of the power now. We used to have way back in the day, these MLS books, and people would come to the office and flip through and they would look, at our listings. It's not like that anymore. Buyers have the power of what inventory they want to see in their hands on their smartphone.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a caveat, at least down here in our area, to seeing everything on Zillow and Trulia and Redfin first. I never want to rule those out. I think that they're great tools. The only issue in our area is sometimes we see a delay from when, and I've actually experienced it myself, from the time when I've actually put a house on the market on MLS, and then MLS filters that to some of these websites. I've seen anywhere from a day to 2-day delay in it showing up on Zillow. So make sure you still watch the listings that we send you, in addition to the ones that you're seeing online, because that's a common mistake. If you're waiting for those to come up and you see it online, on Zillow or someplace, and 2 days have gone by, you could be out of the running already, just based on the timing of it. So don't be that buyer.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I've looked at all of the different consumer sites, and how everything gets syndicated is the company basically pings the RMLS database for information. And companies like Redfin and Zillow are going to be doing that more often than, for example, Better Homes and Gardens. I know, like, when I put a listing on, even on my company website, it'll take about 24 hours to get updated on that site. where I've actually timed it on Redfin, and it's like within 7 minutes, I think was the quickest I saw. So inventory does get updated pretty quickly on the bigger company websites. So I usually tend to refer people to, like we can't, as a technology company, MLS and all these other real estate websites can't compete against somebody like Redfin and Zillow who's seeing that information and that data all of the time. So, I mean, it's just silly not to use Redfin and Zillow additionally.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think use them both and watch all of the information that's coming to you, including for sale by owners. Those can be out there, and we don't rule those out either. We want to make sure that we're looking at all the possibilities. So, what you were saying something earlier about seeing finding your home on Redfin, and you set up your own automatic update and but the reason you found yours is because the pictures weren't good. And so I would say also, let's add to that. If you see ugly pictures of houses, don't rule those houses out because they actually could be very charming. It could be the photographer, whoever the photographer is, could be the agent. It's hard to tell, but the photographer may have taken some terrible shots. That could be an advantage to a buyer.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to go to open houses too. If you're not doing anything on a Saturday or a Sunday anyway, which is how I ended up in that situation, I would encourage people to go to open houses and walk through some new construction, walk through the open houses in the areas that you want to be in, because there was some compromises that I was willing to make, but location was not one of them. And I'm okay with doing some updates. So that's how I ended up coming across this house.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine, I was able to find the house. The pictures were okay, but the timing in which the house was actually listed during the week, it was not at the forefront of other agents' minds. And so I ended up getting in there, writing an offer very quickly. Like I went in there, I knew exactly what to do. And we got that one under contract pretty quickly. We did have to compete against one other buyer, but that was way better than having to compete against, 5 to 10 other buyers.
I feel like I have a similar story with my house too, because we went to an open house and it had just sold the day before, but for whatever reason, the realtor was still having an open house. Not 100% sure. Well, I wasn't 100% sure at the time, but when she told me that, I thought, okay, well, I guess we'll just look at the house just for kicks and giggles. And she took down our name and phone number. She's like, if anything happens, and this falls through, I'll let you know. And we were, young. It was early on in our looking at homes. And I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. And 3 months later, she calls me up and says, hey, the loan fell through. Are you interested? And it was because you can't get a USDA home loan for a house that has the well too close to the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter for conventional. And that's how we ended up getting this place.
Yeah. I mean, there's advantages all over. You have to look a little bit for sure. And in your case, it worked out. Backup offers. I am a huge fan of backup offers because there's a 50-50 shot that you could still end up getting that house.
I have a great story of a backup offer situation. So I had some clients who we wrote an offer. I want to say it was like $14,000 or $15,000 over asking price. The seller put us in backup position. We also made a pretty competitive offer because my guy is a contractor and he's handy. And so he said that he wouldn't ask for any repairs under $3,000. So if there was a lot of, nickel and dime type stuff, he just flat out wasn't going to ask for it. Anyway, long story short, about 3 weeks later, the seller's agent called and said, hey, we're moving you up into first position. And I was like, why? Just out of curiosity. And I kind of had a feeling, I don't know why, but things are always supposed to work out how they're supposed to, right? So the people that were in first position were the wife was pregnant. There was probably about $1,500 to $2,000 worth of mild miscellaneous repairs, but the house was built in the 90s. So it's at that time period where, it's going to start needing maintenance and stuff. And my buyers were totally fine with that. They knew going into it that the furnace and the air conditioning were older. If it goes out, it goes out. They'll pay for it. And so that's how they ended up actually being in first position. And the house is gorgeous. I mean, they have an amazing view. It was a cool story to see it work out. And I, on the flip side, had a listing this year. We actually went for our backup offer, our second backup offer, had to come back on the market because of the same thing, first time homebuyers that just thought it was too much work for them. And the third time we were able to get it in contract and get it sold, it's a 1960s house. There was a lot of little stuff. The seller was willing to take care of all of that, but some people can't handle going into a situation where they know that in 5 years they might spend $10,000 on the house, and some people are.
Yeah, it really just depends. And if you go into it with an open mind and kind of know your limits, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to take on yourself? Because in this market, the power really is in the seller's hands. And so you need to be aware of what that threshold is. And so if you need to, you can make some compromises and be willing to take some things on yourself. Because it'll get you the house probably in the long run, the more forgiving that you are. Another thing is, when you're getting ready to write an offer, you've seen the house. Our recommendation is to make sure that by the time you set foot in the house, you're already prepared mentally to write an offer. It's not us trying to push you into writing an offer ever. That's never it. But if you like the house and you want a chance at it with the way the market's moving and how quickly things are going, you need to be prepared to write an offer. And in that, you also need to be putting your best offer in. I think that's a common buyer mistake, that they think that, oh, well, the seller will just counter if they want to. But that's actually not really an option when there's 5 different offers on the table. They're gonna counter the one that they like, maybe, or they're most likely just going to accept the one they like, maybe.
Yeah, I would say be ready to write a strong offer right off the bat. Another thing that I've had people do is they'll say, oh, I'll write a strong offer off the bat, but I'm going to try and get as much as I can back on inspections. Don't ever expect that the seller is going to agree to an inspection list because you're trying to negotiate some of that money back. That's a bad strategy to have going into the house. I mean, you have to, obviously we want health, safety, major things that would be extremely costly to be taken care of by the seller. And I think that's a reasonable negotiation. But little stuff, I mean, they're not going to change the carpet out. You saw that the carpet was green when you bought the house. You can't ask for that kind of stuff later. So
I totally agree with that. And I think that I have seen that, like with other agents, they feel that they're going in with a strategy and they're going to get some of that money back through the inspection time. But ultimately, the seller, the way our contracts are written, the seller doesn't have to do any repairs at all. That's a common misconception, that the seller is just going to do a bunch of repairs. And when they've got 5 offers on the table, they pick yours, but they may also pick a backup if they feel that you're being, too nitpicky or asking for repairs that may be inappropriate or they just don't want to do. They have the option to just say, no, we're not doing any repairs at all. Take it or leave it, buy the house or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I do see that sometimes in this market. I think most sellers want to show, they want to be able to present a nice house to the new buyers. And they're willing to do some repairs usually, especially if they're related to financing. But we do see that strategy sometimes. And I think it can ultimately backfire and cause more issues in the long run. And in a sense can, it can kind of jeopardize your position in purchasing the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, hey, Andy, do we have any listener questions?
Yeah, we do actually. James writes, how do I find a house when nothing is on the market?
Well,
I hear that all the time. That's tough. Well, besides staying on top of the inventory that's coming out, there are some ways that Andrea and I help create inventory, so to speak. talking with the other agents in our office is a big one, or other agents in other companies. Oftentimes they'll mention something in passing, especially with all this COVID stuff going on. People don't really necessarily want people coming in and out of their houses. So if a seller is able to sell without having to go on the market, that's a great way to create inventory. I've often put out an email to the company saying, hey, I have a buyer who's looking for X, and I explain their criteria, and I'll get responses on that. That's one way I've created inventory. Another way is going back and looking at expired listings that haven't sold over the last couple of years and seeing if, based on the location and some of the criteria of the buyer, reaching out to that other agent or reaching out to the seller and saying, if you're still interested in selling, I might have a buyer for you. And we talked a little bit about for sale by owners as well. They're a great source of finding inventory as well.
Yeah, and I think I've put 2 under contract this year with just talking with agents in the office and, oh, hey, what do you have coming up? And this is what I've got coming up. And this is one thing I'm really looking for right now. And it's been a great thing for both parties because A, they didn't have to get their house ready for the market, and the buyers were happy. They got exactly what they wanted and had very little competition as well. Another idea that I think sometimes gets overlooked is the idea of new construction. Buyers, sometimes just kind of rule that out as an option. I'm not sure why. Maybe because they don't want to wait for the house to be built. But a lot of builders out there in this market are willing to take a contingent offer, meaning you would have to sell your house first. And that can be a really great option because it gives you the time and the comfort of, yes, I already have this new house under contract. We're waiting for it to be built. I just have to get my house under contract. Usually the selling part is a very quick thing. We can get buyers very quickly. And then it's just a process of waiting for the house to get built and close on both. And then bam, you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. New construction is something that, again, like you said, that's overlooked. If there's new construction, first of all, there's nothing better than a brand new house, right? I mean, to know that nobody else has lived in your house, walked on your carpet, used your toilet. I mean, that's amazing. It's also less competitive. There's not, generally speaking, multiple offers unless there's, some really desirable lot. I've seen cases of that. But for the most part, on new construction, it's not quite as competitive. And I've had several new construction deals this year where people lived a little bit outside of their typical area. I had a guy looking in Tualatin, and Tualatin was extremely competitive in the price range he was looking in, which was about $600,000. And he was able to get a gorgeous 3,000 square foot brand new house with a big yard in Canby for a lot less money. I think we were in the 530 range.
Yeah, it's amazing. What's out there, and builders have some pretty good deals too. A lot of times they'll throw in air conditioning. Sometimes they'll throw in a refrigerator. I mean, they've got some really good deals out there. And like I said, the fact that they are able to accept a contingent offer is a huge advantage for buyers. Because a lot of times buyers, they have a house to sell. They need to sell their current one. So, Andy, what was our next question? I think we had another one, right?
Yeah. So when we are looking at homes, this is actually a question that I had for you guys. When you're looking at brand new buildings of homes, does it kind of pay to follow up with the contractor, see if they have other projects they're working on in the area as well?
It really just depends on, the new construction that we're talking about is larger subdivisions, a little bit more cookie cutter homes. However, some of the smaller builders, I would say, yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting up here. There are probably on the west side, there's probably the most amount of new construction. There's, probably 10 major builders that consistently have quite a bit of inventory. You're looking at, like Polygon and Lennar and Richmond America and Stonebridge, and there's kind of the same builders that always have a lot of inventory. If you don't like that particular subdivision, guaranteed some of those guys are building in a different subdivision. So
Yeah, it's we have probably fewer of the large builders down here in the valley, but we have a lot of smaller builders, so it always pays to kind of see what they're doing.
So if I see a bunch of people dressed in black pulling into my neighbor's house and they all look very melancholy, I shouldn't be excited about a home to buy. That's bad etiquette. Is that what I'm hearing?
Probably
Okay.
bad.
All
Yeah,
right.
probably bad. Yeah, I mean, well, you do what you got to do.
Hey, it's a seller's market. I'm just saying.
It is, yeah. Well, those were the last questions, right? Okay. Well, if anyone out there is thinking about purchasing, maybe you're a first-time home buyer, maybe you're renting right now, maybe you already own a home and you're trying to see, how would we get from A to B? Talk to Jen and I and ask those questions, because you don't really know until you ask the questions. And we all the time talk to people, no obligation whatsoever. You know what? We would rather keep our friendships than have you think that we're out to constantly sell you houses. So make sure you ask those questions. We're totally open books on that. So thank you guys for joining us today. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and realoregonlifestyle.com. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you.